Welcome back to another episode. Today we're going to discuss the Colombo family wars. But before we get into the video, make sure to hit that subscribe button so you don't miss any new episodes. Also, stick around until the end of the video because I have a special announcement. Let's get into the video. The Colombo family wars, Part 1. It was one of the largest, most lavish affairs in mob history. At least 400 guests attended the October 1956 wedding of Colombo crime family mobsters Salvador Bonanno and Rosalie Profaci. It was a star-studded affair held at the swanky Hotel New Yorker in Manhattan, with some of the biggest names in organized crime in attendance, including bosses from the Gambino, Genovese, and Lucchese families, as well as several high-ranking members of the NYPD. The happy couple was showered with expensive gifts, including $25,000 in cash from the best man, Joseph Barbera, boss of the Bonanno crime family. The cash alone would be worth more than $270,000 today. Stacks of money were everywhere. One guest later recalled, "There was so much money there, everybody was using it like Kleenexes." The celebration went on for 4 days with parties and receptions held in mobsters' homes. But even as mobsters celebrated the union of two of their own, dark clouds were gathering on the horizon. There had already been a murder in the weeks leading up to the wedding, and there would be more to come. Tensions were so high, in fact, that police commissioner to Howard R. Leary had to order 400 cops to guard the event. Cops were even stationed inside the hotel ballroom to keep order during the reception. Police intelligence was also watching closely. Undercover agents had infiltrated the wedding planning committee, and an army of informers were listening in to every conversation they could. But despite all the precautions, no one saw what was coming. On the night of October, after the reception but before the ceremony, 3 men entered the hotel room of mobster Gallo and opened fire. Gallo and his bodyguard were killed instantly. Within minutes, the entire hotel was swarming with police. But the assassins were long gone. So, who ordered the hit, and why? The prime suspect was Joseph Barbera. He had been bitter over Gallo's refusal to allow his daughter to marry one of Gallo's associates. But the murder didn't really help Barbara's case. His daughter had broken off the engagement herself. Not because of any pressure from Gallo, as he claimed, but because she couldn't take the constant fear of her boyfriend being whacked anymore. So who did order the hit? Maybe someone close to Gallo. The victim had been known to double-cross people and steal their money. He also had a reputation for being volatile and quick to anger. Perhaps someone had finally reached a breaking point. Whatever the reason, the murder would only be the beginning. Gallo's funeral was one of the largest in mob history, drawing more than 10,000 mourners. It was an open secret that many of them were there to avenge Gallo's death. Tempers flared and punches were thrown. One man even pulled a gun, but it misfired. The situation was eventually brought under control. But not before several arrests were made. The violence would erupt again just months later. In February 1957, Gallo's brother-in-law, mobster Anthony, was found dead in his car in the Bronx. He had been shot once in the back of the head. This time, the killer was one of Gallo's own. The motive was robbery. Tony had been storing cash and narcotics for his brother when he was killed. The message was clear. Gallo's killers were sending a message. They were telling the family, "We're not just going to get away with this. We're not going to let you forget what happened to our guys. And we're definitely not going to let you take this lying down." Now, Gallo's family had to decide how to respond. They chose revenge, and they chose it in the most brutal way possible. After an emergency meeting at Gallo's house, the decision was made. 2 of Gallo's brothers-in-law and a friend would be executed. The hit squad was led by Bonanno crime family Caporaghi, Thomas E. Joe, the Greek. The targets were selected carefully. All 3 men had criminal records and none of them were close to Gallo. If anyone was going to survive, it would be his wife and children. In the early hours of June 1957, Joe took his team to the home of Gallo's friend Anthony and executed him in cold blood. His body was dumped in a nearby sewer where it was found the following day. The other 2 hits were carried out later that same day. Gallo's brother-in-law mobster Joseph was killed while driving in his car. His body was riddled with bullets. The 3rd man was killed in his home. The hit squad simply walked in and shot him dead in front of his wife and kids. Once the executions were complete, Joe returned to the Greek Anthony Gallo's house and reported to his boss, Joseph Barbera. The message was clear. The family had avenged their own, but the war was far from over. In the wake of the killings, the media dubbed the warring factions the Banana Mafia and the Gallo Mafia. It seemed as if all of organized crime was about to go to war, but the violence never came. Instead, the 2 sides agreed to a truce, at least temporarily. However, it soon became clear that neither side was willing to back down. Both Barone and Gallo continued to expand their criminal empires. They continued to recruit new members, and they continued to plan new crimes. The violence may have stopped for now, but it would erupt again when Gallo tried to break the truce. In March 1958, Gallo sent a team of thugs to kill Barbera, but the attempt failed. Gallo's men had made a critical mistake. They had underestimated Barbara's paranoia. Always surrounded by bodyguards, Barbera managed to escape unharmed. But Gallo's reputation was in tatters. He had violated the truce, and he had done it in the worst way possible. Now Barbera had the excuse he needed to declare all-out war. He wasted no time. The first attack came in November 1958. As Gallo drove through the streets of Manhattan, a Cadillac packed with gunmen opened fire. Gallo survived, but his chauffeur was killed. It was a clear message. Barbera wasn't afraid to get violent, and he wasn't afraid to target Gallo's associates. That was a line he shouldn't have crossed. Gallo responded in kind. In January 1959, he ordered the murder of Barbera's brother-in-law. The victim was an innocent man who had nothing to do with the mob. He was also a prominent civil rights activist, but that didn't matter to Gallo. He wanted to send a message to Barbera, and what better way to do that than by killing one of his closest relatives and one of the most respected men in the black community. It was now all-out war. In the years that followed, dozens of mobsters were killed or wounded in attacks linked to the feud. The fighting eventually spread to the streets of Brooklyn and Queens. It was the most violent period in mob history, and it threatened to spiral out of control. The two sides were too evenly matched for either one to win. Gallo controlled large parts of northern Manhattan and Brooklyn, while Barbera's men dominated lower Manhattan and the Bronx. But neither man could claim a decisive victory. The fighting eventually took its toll on both of them. Gallo was growing older, and he knew he wouldn't live forever. He started looking for a way out of the war. He found it in 1969. With the help of a federal judge, Gallo and Barbera agreed to a ceasefire. Each side would be allowed to keep their ill-gotten gains, and no more blood would be shed. But the peace didn't last for long. In 1975, Gallo was found guilty of racketeering and conspiracy charges and sentenced to 10 years in prison. Before he went away, though, he ordered the murder of several Barbera associates. Then in 1977, he was paroled. He hoped to resume his old life, but Barbera had other plans. He wasted no time launching a new attack. His men killed Gallo's son and two of his close associates. Once again, it looked as if the violence would spiral out of control, but this time it didn't. Gallo had had enough. He was tired of the fighting, and he was tired of the losses, so he did something he had never done before. He called a truce, this time with one important condition. Barbera and his men would have to swear an oath of allegiance to Gallo. If they refused, they would be killed. It was a bold move, and it paid off. Barbera had no choice but to agree. But so in 1978, the war was finally over. Thanks for watching. Make sure to leave your thoughts and comments down below. And don't forget to subscribe for more amazing videos. See you next time.